Picture this, it's medieval Europe and the sun's just dipped below the horizon, leaving your village cloaked in a chilly, inky darkness. You're bone-tired from hauling firewood or dodging the Lord's tax collector, and all you want is to crash. But forget the modern notion of 8 hours of uninterrupted bliss under a cosy duvet. Back then, sleep was, let's call it an adventure. Welcome to the world of segmented sleep, a bizarre rhythm that'd make your smartwatch throw a tantrum. You'd crawl into bed or whatever pile of straw passed for one right after sundown, drifting into what they called first sleep. Think of it as the appetizer nap lasting about 4 hours. Then like some cruel cosmic alarm, you'd wake up in the dead of night. Not because of a crying baby or a neighbour's lute practice, but because that's just how it worked. This midnight interlude, known as the watch, wasn't seen as insomnia or a personal failure. Oh no, it was prime time for medieval multitasking. You might stoke the fire, its embers crackling like a grumpy old man, or check if your goats were still tethered, because nothing ruins a good night like a runaway billy. Some folks got spiritual whispering prayers to fend off demons or flipping through a dog-eared prayer book by candlelight. And let's be real, this was also the go-to hour for a bit of romance. Medieval doctors swore the body was at its calmest during the watch, which is a fancy way of saying you were too groggy to bicker with your spouse. Imagine trying to be suave while your knees creak like a rusted gate, and the room smells of damp wool and yesterday's stew. After an hour or two of this nocturnal hustle, you'd sink back into second sleep, snoozing until the roosters started their dawn-screaming match. This wasn't just for peasants either. Monks, merchants, even fancy poets like Chaucer scribbled about it, like it was no big deal. Modern science backs this up, suggesting our brains might actually prefer this 2-part sleep without artificial lights messing things up. So next time you're bolt upright at 2 a.m, don't curse your fate, just mutter, "The watch has begun," and maybe poke at an imaginary fireplace. It's your ancestors' fault you're wired this way. Now dim your lights, hit that like button if you're feeling medieval, and let's keep this journey going. What's next? Oh, the beds, or lack thereof. Let's talk about medieval beds, or as I like to call them, medieval torture devices with a side of fleas. You're probably dreaming of your memory foam mattress right now, maybe with a thread count that could make a king jealous. Well, in the Middle Ages, a bed was less cloud-like luxury and more flattened pile of regret. For most peasants, you were lucky if you had a pallet, a sack stuffed with straw or hay laid right on the dirt floor. No sack, no problem. You just heap some straw in a corner, maybe still damp from the field, and call it a night. It was cheap insulated against the cold and doubled as a buffet for every louse and field mouse in a 5-mile radius. You'd lie there itching like you'd rolled in poison ivy, praying the rustling in your bed wasn't a rat plotting a heist on your toes. If you had a bit of coin or a spine that still worked, you might hoist that pallet onto a rickety wooden frame. It didn't make sleep any comfier, but it kept the beetles out of your ears mostly. Linens, a rare treat like spotting a unicorn. Most folks slept in the same sweaty tunic they'd worn all day because pyjamas were about as common as indoor plumbing. And personal space. Forget it. You, your spouse, 3 kids, a cranky grandma, and maybe a cousin who smelled like onions were all piled onto that same straw heap. Roll too far and you're spooning someone's elbow or a stray chicken. Nobles, of course, had it fancier big wooden beds with feather mattresses, embroidered sheets and canopies to block drafts and hopefully the bedbugs. These beds were so posh they got named in wills like "Congrats, you inherited Aunt Agnes's lumpy sleep palace." But for most, a bed wasn't about comfort. It was about not freezing to death while the wind howled through your thatched roof. You'd drift off dreaming of a day when your bed didn't squawk, poke or bite back. If you're enjoying this grim little trip, smash that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Ready for more? Next up, we're diving into the ridiculous world of nightcaps, yes, actual hats. Alright, you're snuggled up, or at least trying to be in your medieval straw pile, but the cold's creeping in like an uninvited guest. Enter the nightcap, and no, I don't mean a shot of whiskey by the fire. This was an actual hat, a floppy, often absurd-looking piece of fabric, designed to keep your noggin from turning into an icicle. Medieval homes were drafty disasters, stone walls sweating with damp thatched roofs, leaking like a bad sieve, and windows made of thin horn or oiled parchment that laughed in the face of insulation. Central heating. That was the family dog, and he wasn't sharing his warmth unless you bribed him with scraps. So to stop your body heat from escaping through your scalp, you'd slap on a nightcap, and trust me, it was a lifesaver. These hats weren't exactly high fashion though. Picture a long pointed wool or linen contraption like something a wizard might wear if he got demoted to chimney sweep. Women sometimes used theirs as a coif doubling as a modesty cover for hair that hadn't seen soap since the last harvest festival. Men just wanted to avoid frostbite. Fancier folks might embroider their caps or dye them to flex their wealth, because nothing screams, "I'm rich," like a neon red hat while you're snoring. In some places, married women had to wear them even in bed because apparently modesty didn't sleep. In towns, a nightcap was also a social signal. Open your door wearing one, and it was the medieval equivalent of saying "I'm off duty, buzz off." Paired with a long scratchy nightshirt, you looked like a grumpy ghost from a Dickens novel minus the chains. Itchy practical and occasionally flammable nightcaps were your best bet against the cold. So next time you're grumbling about a chilly bedroom, thank your lucky stars you're not wrestling with a wool hat that smells like goat. If you're loving this drop, a comment with your time zone. I'm curious who's up with me. Next, we'll explore the chaos of sharing beds with strangers at medieval inns. You're a weary medieval traveller trudging through mud and mist, your mule long since retired to a ditch somewhere outside Norwich. You stumble into an inn dreaming of a warm corner to collapse in, but hold up privacy, a room of your own. That's a fantasy for nobles with gold to burn. What you get instead is a spot in a bed that's already hosting a snoring blacksmith, a chatty pilgrim, and a guy with a suspicious number of warts. Welcome to medieval inn life, where beds were less cosy retreat and more human Tetris. Inns didn't waste space. If a bed had room, you were sharing it, no questions asked. 2, 3, maybe 4 strangers piled in each, staking out their sliver of straw mattress like it was a battlefield. It wasn't rude, it was just good business. Picture the scene, the air's thick with the stench of stale ale, sweaty wool, and something you hope is just the dog. Your bedmates are waging a snoring contest, and someone's elbow is definitely in your ribcage. Personal space. Not a chance. In bigger towns, you might end up in a dormitory-style hall, rows of beds packed with travellers like a sleepover nobody signed up for. Some inns tried to sort folks by trade, blacksmiths with blacksmiths' clergy, with clergy shady types with shadier types, but most just went with whoever flopped down first. Worried about your coin purse, you'd tie it to your belt or sleep on your bag, turning it into a lumpy pillow, and a thief's worst nightmare. Move it, and you'd wake up poorer. For women, it was trickier. Some inns separated genders, but not always, so you'd clutch your cloak and pray for a quiet night. This chaos was still better than curling up in a ditch with wolves howling and rain soaking your boots. Nobles, of course, dodged this mess, rolling in with entourages and demanding their own rooms, because nothing says power like not spooning a stranger. For the rest of you, it was a gamble, warmth and a roof, but at the cost of fleas, farts and zero dignity. If you're vibing with this medieval madness, hit that like button, and tell me where you're tuning in from. Next, we're diving into the spooky world of bedtime prayers, because sleep wasn't just rest, it was a spiritual gauntlet. Alright, you've survived the inn's bed-sharing Olympics and settled into your straw pile, but don't get too comfy. In medieval times, going to bed wasn't just about shutting your eyes, it was a high-stakes mission to save your soul. You didn't drift off with a podcast or a lavender candle. Oh no, you wound down with a full-on spiritual checklist, because dying in your sleep was a real possibility, and showing up at the pearly gates unprepared was not an option. The vibe was less sweet dreams and more hope. I don't wake up in hell. Bedtime prayers were your insurance policy whispered in the flickering glow of a tallow candle that smelled like regret. One classic went, "If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take." Sounds cute, right? Except it's basically a kid's legal contract with God bracing for the worst. Every threat had its own prayer. One for guilt, one for dodging the devil in the rafters, another for warding off the plague, which, let's be honest, didn't work out so well. The devout, like monks and nuns, capped their day with Compline, a final prayer service that was half worship, half exhaustion. After that, they took a vow of silence, which was easy when you were too tired to argue with Brother Snore-a-lot. Kids got in on it too, urged to pray so angels could keep watch. Less guardian, more celestial CCTV. Parents leaned into this because it kept the little ones quiet and distracted from the dog hogging the bed. The whole ritual was less about peace, and more about damage control, like running antivirus software for your soul. You'd mumble your psalms, confess that time you stole an extra turnip, and hope it was enough to keep the demons at bay. If this grim bedtime routine's got you hooked, drop a comment with your time zone. I'm curious who's up with me. Next, we're exploring dreams, because in the Middle Ages they weren't just random brain static, they were divine DMs or demonic traps. You're finally dozing in your medieval bed, the straw poking your back, the nightcap itching your scalp, and the faint snuffle of a pig in the corner lulling you to sleep. But don't think you're just chilling in dreamland. In the Middle Ages, dreams weren't random nonsense or the result of too much mead. They were serious business messages from God, warnings from saints, or worst case a demonic PowerPoint presentation. Your soul was still on the clock while you slept, and every dream was a potential plot twist in your spiritual saga. Dream of a glowing angel. Congrats, you're basically a prophet. Dream of a goat-headed dude juggling fish, time to call the priest, and maybe burn your shoes for good measure. People took this so seriously they'd confess their dreams or fast for days to decode them. Theologians and monks were obsessed writing whole books to crack the dream code. Fire might mean hell's knocking. Water could signal purification or a drowning. It wasn't just symbolism, your dream actions could expose hidden sins. That dream about swiping a loaf of bread, maybe your soul's ratting you out for real-world greed. Or maybe you're just starving. Either way, better confess just to be safe. Monks recorded their visions hoping for divine inspo, though some got told to lay off the onions before bed. In stories, dreams were the Netflix of the era. Knights met angels, demons dropped cryptic riddles, or metaphorical beasts spouted poetry about virtue. The church, predictably, was sceptical. Not every dream was holy. Some were devilish tricks to lure you into sin. Dream something spicy could be Satan's mixtape, or just the fireplace fumes messing with you. This dreamy drama's just one piece of medieval life's wild puzzle. If you're loving it, smash that subscribe button and tell me where you're listening from. Next, we'll tackle the cozy chaos of sharing your bed with animals, because nothing says goodnight like a pig's snout in your face. You're tucked into your medieval straw pile, the nightcap clinging to your scalp like a stubborn barnacle, and the faint glow of the hearth casting shadows that might be demons or just your imagination. But forget dreaming of knights or maidens. Your bed's already got company, and it's not the romantic kind. In the Middle Ages, sharing your sleep space with animals wasn't a quirky pet parent choice. It was a survival tactic. Your house is a drafty box of stone and thatch with wind whistling through cracks like it's auditioning for a ghost story. Central heating. That's the family pig snorting softly by the fire, and maybe a dog or two curled at your feet. You're not cuddling for love, though you might like old Bessie the cow. You're doing it to keep your toes from freezing off in January's icy grip. Picture the scene. Your one-room home is a cozy chaos of humans and livestock. Chickens cluck in the corner, probably plotting a coup. The goat's nibbling the edge of your straw pallet, and the dog sprawled across your legs like he owns the place. Kids are nestled between you and a sheep who's farting something unholy. This isn't about bonding, it's about body heat. A cow in the corner might nudge the room's temperature up a degree, which feels like a miracle when frost is creeping up the walls. Hygiene. Let's not talk about it. The straw's already a petri dish, and nobody's bathed since the last Saint's Day. Wealthier folks dodged this barnyard slumber party, though their lapdog still hopped into bed, not for warmth, but to flaunt their status and redistribute fleas like tiny diplomats. Drawbacks. OSHA a hoof to the face at 3 a.m, or a chicken turning into an impromptu alarm clock. But you adapted because sleeping with pigs beat freezing alone. If this wild medieval sleepover's got you hooked, hit that like button and drop a comment with your time zone. I'm curious who's up with me. Next, we're stepping into the stark world of monastic dormitories, where comfort went to die under a vow of silence. Let's trade your pig-warmed straw pile for something far less cozy, a medieval monastic dormitory, where the vibe is less restful retreat and more boot camp for your soul. Imagine a cavernous room, stone walls sweating with damp, and rows of monks laid out like morally upright sardines. Beds. Ha! You're lucky if you get a wooden plank, maybe topped with a whisper of straw, if the abbot's feeling festive. No pillows, no privacy curtains, just you and your robe, which doubles as pyjama's blanket and a scratchy reminder of your vows. You're sleeping fully dressed, not for modesty, but because dragging yourself out of bed at 2 a.m. for prayers is miserable enough, without fumbling for sandals in the dark. The air smells of cold stone old wax and the faint guilt of someone who snored through Vespers. Silence is the law here, enforced by the rule of St. Benedict, so no whispering about the turnip stew at dinner. Roll over too loudly and you're scrubbing chamber pots for a week. Snoring's a grey area, can't control it, but if it wakes the whole dorm, you're side-eyed into eternity. Lighting's just one flickering candle because you don't need to see. You need to lie still and not sin. Comfort's the enemy. These Spartan setups were training for the afterlife, denying the flesh any hint of luxury. Some monks even slept sitting up because lying flat was too indulgent, and who needs circulation anyway? Compared to this, your peasant bed with its pigs and fleas feels like a 5-star resort. At least the goat didn't judge you for dreaming about that extra loaf of bread. Monks, though, they're watching, and so is God. Loving this grim monastic vibe, smash that subscribe button and tell me where you're listening from. Next, we're diving into the chilly chaos of matins where monks woke at 2 a.m. for prayers that tested their faith and their frostbitten toes. You're a monk barely settled into your plank bed in the freezing dormitory when a bell tolls like it's personally offended by your sleep. It's 2 a.m. and no, you're not hitting snooze. Welcome to Matins, the medieval monk's nightly test of devotion, where you drag your sleep-deprived soul to the chapel for candlelit prayers that feel like a spiritual marathon. You shuffle in silence, still in your robe, sandals slapping the icy stone floor. The chapel's a cavern of shadows smelling of wax and incense, with vaults echoing every off-key chant like a cosmic critique. You're chanting psalms, reciting scriptures, and trying not to nod off, because dozing during matins could land you extra chores, or worse, a lecture on sloth. Some poor soul's stomach growls, reminding everyone dinner was a sad bowl of lentils and a side of guilt. Matins could stretch an hour, maybe 2 if your order was extra zealous. Imagine standing shivering while Brother Ambrose butchers a hymn, and your feet go numb. Why so early? It's all about sacrifice, offering the quietest, darkest part of the night to God, free from daylight's temptations or, warmth. Some strict monasteries skipped second sleep entirely, sending you straight to study, or threshing wheat on 4 hours of rest, because nothing screams holiness like exhaustion. Falling asleep mid-prayer was a real risk. Records show monks got punished for it, like leading the next service as penance. The flickering candles, the droning chants, the cold seeping into your bones, it's less worship, more endurance test. But to them it was proof of faith, a middle-of-the-night flex against the devil himself. If this chilly chapel scene's got you gripped, drop a comment with your time zone. I'm dying to know who's up with me. Next, we're exploring why sleeping in groups was a medieval must, from warmth to warding off demons. You're sprawled on your medieval straw pallet, the fire's embers barely holding back the chill, and your nightcap slipping off like it's got better places to be. But you're not alone, and that's no accident. In the Middle Ages, sleeping solo was about as sensible as wandering into a wolf-infested forest with a pork chop tied to your neck. You're crammed in with your kids, your spouse, maybe a neighbour's kid, who showed up for supper and never left. The room's a symphony of snores farts and the occasional bleat from a goat who's claimed the best spot. This isn't about family bonding, it's about survival. Your home's a drafty shack with stone walls that radiate cold, and a chimney that's more decorative than functional. Piling together means sharing body heat, turning your bed into a human furnace against the January freeze. But warmth's only half the story. The night was when the devil clocked in for overtime, and sleeping alone left your soul wide open to his tricks. Folks believed demons, ghosts, or fairies might snatch you if you were unguarded. Group sleeping was like a spiritual force field. Someone's always there to spot the glowing eyes in the corner, or nudge you awake before you're possessed. Kids especially weren't left alone. Tales of spirits stealing lone sleepers kept parents on edge. Even married couples shared their bed with kid servants or random guests because privacy was a myth, and a big empty bed screamed up to no good. Monks slept in dorms for the same reason solitude was a sin magnet. If you got stuck sleeping alone, it was probably punishment, like a timeout for your soul. So next time you savour your solo bed, thank the stars you're not wedged between a snoring cousin and a sheep. If this crowded bed vibes got you hooked, hit that like button and tell me where you're tuning in from. Next, we're diving into the bizarre world of upright sleeping, because lying flat was apparently too risky. Alright, you've survived another night in your medieval group hug, but let's shake things up. Some folks didn't even lie down to sleep. Nope, they propped themselves up like they were auditioning for a statue gig. Upright sleeping was a thing, especially among the pious, or the paranoid, and it wasn't about comfort, because who needs a functioning spine, right? Picture a noble in a fancy bed propped on bolsters, or a slanted headboard looking like they're digesting a whole boar while fending off invisible demons, or a monk leaning against a cold monastery wall, hood-up knees creaking like a haunted gate. Why, well, medieval doctors swore lying flat was bad news for your lungs' digestion, or the mystical bodily humours. A sneeze could rearrange your soul, so sitting up kept your brain from drowning in phlegm. Solid logic, right? Then there's the spiritual angle. Lying flat looked too much like a corpse, and you didn't want to tempt the angel of death by practising for your funeral. Superstition ran wild sleep like the dead, and you might wake up actually dead. Nobles rigged their beds with angled supports perfect for sipping mead or dodging Satan's midnight pop-ins. Monks took it next level, sleeping upright on benches to avoid any whiff of luxury. Dreams too risky, comfort a sin waiting to happen. It was all about discipline, keeping your soul on high alert while your body begged for mercy. This wasn't restful. Your neck would feel like it wrestled a bear, but it was virtuous. Compared to straw piles and pigs, it's hard to say what's worse. At least the pig didn't care if you slouched. Loving this upright insanity. Drop a comment with your time zone. I'm curious who's up with me. Next we're tackling the real nightmare of medieval sleep, the creepy crawlies in your bed. You're finally drifting off in your medieval bed, the straw jabbing your ribs, your upright neighbours snoring like a choir of drunk oxen. But something's tickling your shin, and it's not your imagination. Meet the uninvited guests of every medieval bedroom fleas lice, and the bedbug, the unofficial mascot of misery. Hygiene wasn't exactly a medieval strong suit. Baths were a twice-a-year treat. Soap was a luxury, and your straw mattress was basically a pest Airbnb. Fleas hopped around like they owned the place, lice set up camp in your hair, and bedbugs lurked in bed frames sneaking out to feast like tiny vampires. You'd wake up scratching, looking like you'd fought a nettle bush and lost. Even nobles weren't safe. Their fancy feather beds were just deluxe buffers for bugs and some hired nitpickers to comb their scalps. Imagine that on your resume. Solutions were creative. You might burn wormwood or tansy, filling the room with a stench like a witch's brew, hoping to scare the critters off. Others tucked garlic or ashes into the bed, which didn't bug the bugs, but sure kept your spouse at a distance. Nightcaps and long nightshirts doubled as pest armour, though they were about as effective as a paper shield. The worst part, fleas weren't just itchy. They were moral snitches biting you as punishment for humanity's sins. Poets even wrote about them, some grim, some weirdly flirty, like our loves as close as a shared flea bite. Gross, but poetic. Modern sleep's got its woes. Phones buzzing, streetlights glaring, but at least you're not waging war with an army of crawlers. Medieval folks, they scratched, prayed, and somehow kept on dreaming. If this buggy nightmare's got you gripped, smash that subscribe button and tell me where you're listening from. Next, we'll shift gears to the eerie tensions of 1692. Salem say next to dive in. Winter, 1692, and you're in Salem, Massachusetts, a Puritan village hunched under a sky as grey as the sermons preached every Sunday. The wind howls through timber-framed houses carrying whispers of fear and frost that bite deeper than the cold. You're not just fighting the snow piling against your door, you're wrestling with a community teetering on the edge of paranoia. These Puritans are devout their lives a tightrope walk between God's grace and Satan's snares. They're building a holy city in the wilderness, but the wilderness fights back. Failed crops, smallpox scars and wars with native tribes leave everyone raw. Neighbours eye each other over petty land disputes, old grudges fester like untended wounds, and the villages split from Salem town over politics and piety has everyone on edge. You feel it in the air, thick as the smoke from your hearth suspicion. Every creak in the floorboards could be the devil's hoof, every shadow a witch's curse. The long, dark New England nights stretch nerves, thin, and superstition runs wild. Stories of spirits and hexes keep kids awake clutching their prayer books. You're praying too, because salvation's not guaranteed, and the preacher's voice still echoes, warning that Satan's stalking these frozen fields. The community is brittle, ready to crack under the weight of fear, faith and the bitter cold. Something's got to give, and when it does, it won't be quiet. If you're hooked on this eerie vibe, hit that like button and drop a comment with your time zone. I'm curious who's up with me. Next we're diving into the spark that lit Salem's fire, the first accusations. You're still in Salem 1692, where the air's so thick with dread you can taste it bitter, like the dregs of last week's cider. The village is a powder keg, and the spark comes from the home of Reverend Samuel Parris. His 9-year-old daughter, Betty, and 11-year-old niece Abigail Williams start acting like they've stepped out of a nightmare. They scream like banshees, hurl objects across the room, twist their bodies into shapes that'd make a contortionist wince. Sometimes they fall silent, eyes wide with terror, staring at shadows only they can see. You're a neighbour watching this unfold, and your gut twists cursed, bewitched, or worse. The girls whimper about invisible hands, pinching them bites from unseen teeth. Whispers spread faster than smallpox. The devil's in the minister's house. Reverend Parris, pale as the snow outside, calls in Dr. William Griggs. The doctor pokes and prods, finds no fever or flux, and drops a word that lights the fuse witchcraft. In a place where witches are as real as the Bible on your table, that word's a death knell. The girls, prodded by adults and peers, start pointing fingers. First, they name the easy targets Tituba, the enslaved woman from Barbados, whose stories and accent already spook the locals. Under pressure, maybe even a lash or two, Tituba confesses spinning tales of spells and spirits. Her words don't calm the storm, they unleash it. Salem's fear turns to fury and the hunt begins. If this chilling chaos has you gripped, smash that subscribe button and tell me where you're listening from. Next, we're leaping to ancient Rome with Fulvia, a woman who shook an empire. You're in Rome around 47 BCE, where the air hums with ambition and the streets reek of sweat, wine and blood. The Republic's a chaotic chessboard, and one woman's playing like a Grandmaster Fulvia. She's no demure matron weaving by the hearth. She's a political powerhouse married to Mark Antony, the brash general climbing Rome's ladder like it's a tavern brawl. Their union isn't just love or lust, it's a merger of muscle and cunning. You see Fulvia at Antony's side, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd, her mind 3 moves ahead. She's buried 2 husbands, outfoxed enemies, and learned the game of Roman politics where knives are as common as handshakes. Antony, with his booming laugh and scandal-soaked past, needs her savvy to anchor his rise. Fulvia's not just a wife, she's a force. She opens Antony's letters, issues, orders when he's off campaigning, and sits in on meetings where senators squirm under her gaze. Roman gossips hiss, she's too bold, too mannish, but she doesn't care. She rallies street gangs, charms soldiers, and keeps Antony's allies in line like a general herding cats. Coins bear her name alongside his, a slap to tradition that says, "I'm here, deal with it." In a world where women are supposed to whisper from the shadows, Fulvia's shouting from the Senate's doorstep. Her enemies call her power-hungry. Her supporters call her indispensable. Either way, she's rewriting the rules, and Rome's not ready. If this fierce woman's got you hooked, drop a comment with your time zone. I'm dying to know who's up. Next, we'll see how Fulvia holds Rome while Antony's away. You're back in Rome, 44 BCE, and the city's a pressure cooker ready to burst. Julius Caesar's just been stabbed into history, leaving a power vacuum that smells like blood and betrayal. Mark Antony is off chasing legions and alliances, but you're watching Fulvia, his wife, hold Rome like it's her personal fortress. She's not lounging in a villa sipping wine, she's in the thick of it, navigating the capital's gritty streets, where loyalty shifts faster than a pickpocket's hands. Fulvia's Antony's eyes, ears, and iron fist, running his political machine with a grit that makes senators sweat. You see her cutting deals with street gangs, tossing silver to keep the plebs cheering Antony's name, and twisting arms to ensure his laws pass smoother than a chariot on the Appian Way. She's everywhere, schmoozing with veterans whose swords keep Antony's power sharp, and orchestrating marriages to cement alliances like her daughter Clodia to Octavian, a shaky truce that's more like a lit fuse. Fulvia's face is on coins, her name stamped beside Antony's, a bold move that screams, "I'm not just his wife, I'm his equal." Old-school Romans clutch their togas, muttering about women overstepping, but she's too busy running the show, opening Antony's mail, issuing orders, even sitting in on war councils where men choke on their own pride. Hostile scribes call her a meddler, a shrew, but strip away the venom and you see a woman mastering a man's game in a city that doesn't know what to do with her. She's building Antony's empire from the ground up, and the cracks between him and Octavian are starting to show. If this power play's got you gripped, hit that like button and drop your time zone in the comments. I'm curious who's up. Next, we're diving into Fulvia's boldest move, the Prussian War. It's 41 BCE, and you're in the heart of Rome's chaos, where Fulvia's about to roll the dice on a move so audacious it'll echo through history. Antony's still in the east wooing allies, and maybe Cleopatra, leaving Fulvia and his brother Lucius to guard his turf in Italy. But Octavian Caesar's slick heir is stirring trouble, snatching land from Italians to reward his soldiers. The locals are fuming, and Fulvia sees her chance. You watch her seize the moment not with whispers, but with swords. She and Lucius rally 8 legions, storm the city of Perugia, and declare war on Octavian. This isn't just politics, it's the Prussian War, the first time a Roman woman's ever orchestrated a civil war, and Fulvia's fingerprints are all over it. She's no figurehead. You see her rallying troops, her voice cutting through the din of armour and angry shouts urging soldiers to fight for Antony's honour. She writes to generals, stirs up the crowds with speeches that paint Octavian as a tyrant trampling Caesar's legacy. Rome buzzes with rumours she's outshining Lucius, pushing him into battles he'd rather avoid. Octavian strikes back hard, besieging Perugia, through a brutal winter cutting off food and hope. You're there as Fulvia watches her gamble crumble, trapped in a starving city, her allies wavering. By early 40 BCE, Perugia falls, and Fulvia's dream of crushing Octavian shatters. Lucius is spared, but Fulvia's branded too dangerous for Rome. Exiled, she's sent to Sixion in Greece, her power stripped like a toga in a storm. If this war's got you hooked, smash that subscribe button and tell me where you're listening from. Next, we're following Fulvia into exile and betrayal. You're in Sixion, Greece, 40 BCE, and the air's heavy with salt and defeat. Fulvia, once Rome's fiercest power broker, is now in exile, cast out after her failed war against Octavian. You see her pacing a dusty villa, her sharp eyes dulled by exhaustion, her health fading like a candle burned at both ends. She waged the Prussian War for Antony's glory, raising armies in his name, but where's he now? Not here. He's in Egypt, tangled in Cleopatra's orbit, lifting goblets at banquets, while Fulvia's left to rot in this diplomatic backwater. The betrayal stings worse than any siege, political, personal, and raw. She fought to keep Antony's grip on Italy, but he's let her twist in the wind, maybe even furious she acted without his nod. Some of Antony's soldiers, loyal to Fulvia's fire, beg him to reconcile, but the silence is deafening. You feel her isolation, a woman who once commanded riots and legions, now reduced to whispers in a foreign town. Her body's breaking, stress, illness, or a heart cracked by betrayal. Who can say she's barely 43 when she dies alone, her dreams of Rome's future buried with her? Antony doesn't mourn long. He marries Octavian's sister Octavia, sealing a shaky peace that Fulvia would have spat on. Her death's a convenient exit for him, wiping the slate clean of her rebellion. Rome tries to erase her, painting her as a power-mad shrew, but her shadow lingers, coins with her name. Armies she raised, a legacy too fierce to vanish. If this heartbreak's got you gripped, drop a comment with your time zone. I'm dying to know who's up. Next, we're wrapping Fulvia's story with her enduring legacy. You're standing in the shadow of Rome's crumbling republic, 40 BCE, fading into memory, and Fulvia's gone dead in exile, her fire snuffed out. But her story's not done. It's being rewritten by the men she outmaneuvered, outshone, and terrified. You see the scribes, quills, scratching venom, painting her as the villain of the Prussian War, a jealous shrew who dragged Antony and Rome into chaos. Plutarch and Dio sneer, blaming her ambition, her gall to act like a man in a world that demanded women stay silent. Antony himself plays along, marrying Octavia to patch things up with Octavian, letting Fulvia's memory take the fall for his political fumbles. No grand funeral, no statues, just silence like she was never there. Yet you can't help but smirk at how hard they try to erase her, because Fulvia's too big to vanish. Look closer and her fingerprints are everywhere. Coins stamped with her name, a first for any Roman woman. Armies she raised, streets she ruled, alliances she forged with a flick of her sharp tongue. She was no saint, ruthless as Caesar, cunning as Pompey, but her crime was her gender daring to command where women were meant to obey. Later women like Livia and Cleopatra walked paths Fulvia carved, wielding power she proved possible. Modern scholars dust off her story, seeing not a caricature but a pioneer who shook Rome's foundations. Her legacy is a quiet roar, echoing through history's cracks, daring you to listen past the lies. She wasn't a footnote, she was a force, and Rome's still reeling. If this fierce woman's got you hooked, hit that like button and drop your time zone in the comments. I'm curious who's up. Next, we're jumping to 1963 America, where a different fight's brewing. It's summer 1963, and you're in the deep south of the United States, where the air's thick with humidity and hate. Segregation isn't just a custom, it's the law carved into every corner of life. You're black, and you can't sit at a diner counter, drink from a white fountain, or vote without risking a beating or worse. Birmingham, Alabama feels like a war zone. Police dogs snarl at protesters. Fire hoses knock kids off their feet, and lynchings still haunt the night. You smell tear gas in the streets, hear the crack of batons, and feel the weight of a system built to keep you down. But something's stirring a fire that won't be doused. The civil rights movement's gaining ground, fueled by sit-ins, boycotts, and the stubborn courage of folks like Rosa Parks and Medgar Evers. You're watching history crack open, but it's not pretty. The nation splits, some cling to old ways, others ache for change. Black Americans are done waiting, their voices rising from churches and jail cells. A march on Washington, D.C. is whispered about, not just for jobs, but for dignity, for the right to live without fear. It's no small thing. It's a demand to rewrite America's soul. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., an A. Philip Randolph for rallying, and you feel the ground shift under your feet. This isn't just a protest, it's a reckoning, and the world's about to watch. If this tense, hopeful vibe's got you gripped, smash that subscribe button and tell me where you're listening from. Next, we're diving into the chaos of planning this historic march. You're in 1963, and the idea of a massive march on Washington, D.C. is no longer a dream. It's a logistical beast, and you're sweating just thinking about it. Over 100,000 people, maybe more, are set to flood the capital, demanding jobs and freedom. You're behind the scenes with Bayard Rustin, the unsung genius, wrestling this chaos into shape. He's a master strategist, openly gay, in a time when that's a career death sentence, yet he's unfazed, channeling Gandhi's non-violence and military precision. You see him scribbling plans, buses from every state, portable toilets, water stations, medics, marshals, sound systems, loud enough to wake Lincoln's statue. Its madness permits funds and crowd control all in 8 weeks, and the FBI's watching, bugging phones convinced this'll turn into a riot or a communist plot. Rustin's team tracks every train, every dollar. You hear the clack of typewriters churning out flyers, feel the buzz of churches spreading the word faster than any newspaper. The big 6 civil rights groups, NAACP, SCLC, SNCC and more, bicker over tactics, some wanting fire, others diplomacy, but they unite for this. The march's dual cry, racial justice and economic rights, hits hard, demanding a $2 minimum wage and desegregated schools. President Kennedy's nervous, the National Guard's on standby, and liquor sales are banned in DC for the day. You're there as Rustin times every speech to the second, knowing one spark could derail it all. This isn't just a march, it's a high-stakes gamble to shake America's conscience. If this planning frenzy's got you hooked, drop a comment with your time zone. I'm dying to know who's up. Next, we're living the day of the march itself. It's August 28th, 1963, and you're standing on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., sweat beading on your neck under a sun that's hotter than a Mississippi summer. The air hums with hope and defiance as over 250,000 people, black, white, young, old preachers, workers, even movie stars, pour in like a human river. You're shoulder to shoulder with strangers, some in Sunday suits, others gripping signs that scream freedom. Now buses rumble in from Alabama, trains from New York, folks walking miles just to be here. No chaos, though. Volunteers wave you forward. Red Cross hands out water, and gospel choirs near the reflecting pool lift your soul with songs that feel like prayers. You hear chants of jobs and freedom bouncing off the Lincoln Memorial's marble, a heartbeat for a nation that's got to change. You spot celebrities, Harry Belafonte, Joan Baez, Marlon Brando, but they're not here for selfies. They're marching same as you, their faces set with purpose. No one's pushing or shouting. It's calm, almost sacred, like a church service with the sky as the roof. You're black maybe, and just standing here counted among thousands feels like a quiet revolution. Or you're white, linking arms with a stranger, knowing this is bigger than any one of you. Kids clutch their parents' hands, eyes wide at the sea of people. The government braced for riots, but you're proving them wrong, every step a testament to discipline and dreams. You're not just watching history, you're making it, and the world's eyes are on you. If this electric moment's got you hooked, hit that like button and drop your time zone in the comments. I'm curious who's up. Next, we're diving into the speeches that shook the day. You're still on the National Mall, 1963, the sun blazing, the crowd of 250,000 buzzing like a live wire. It's noon, and the march on Washington's official program kicks off a parade of voices that cut through the humid air. You're listening as leaders from the big 6 civil rights groups, NAACP, SCLC, SNCC, and more, take the stage, each demanding justice with a different flavor. They call for equal pay, desegregated schools, and end to police brutality, their words landing like hammer blows on a nation's conscience. Mahalia Jackson steps up, her gospel voice soaring a balm for hearts bruised by years of hate. You feel the crowd sway, some singing along, others wiping tears. Marian Anderson follows, once barred from singing nearby for her race, now belting truth under an open sky. Then, Daisy Bates speaks, the only woman given a moment, reading a statement for female activists sidelined by the march's own blind spots. Her voice is steady, but you sense the sting she's standing for. Ella Baker, Rosa Parks, and countless others who deserve the mic. Young John Lewis, just 23, grabs your attention next, his SNCC speech fiery, even after elders toned it down. He's not asking for change, he's demanding it, and the crowd roars. Every word, every note builds tension like a storm gathering strength. You're waiting for the one voice everyone's here for, the man whose words could shift history. The air's thick with anticipation, and you know something monumental's coming. If these powerful voices have you gripped, smash that subscribe button and tell me where you're listening from. Next, we're reliving Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech. You're at the Lincoln Memorial mid-afternoon, August 28, 1963, and the crowd's gone quiet. 250,000 souls holding their breath. Martin Luther King Jr. steps to the podium, his dark suit crisp despite the heat. His face calm but burning with purpose. You're close enough to see his hands grip the prepared notes, but what's about to happen isn't scripted. He starts steady, laying out the raw truth. A century after emancipation, black Americans are still shackled by segregation police clubs and broken promises. His voice rises and falls like a preacher's, each word a call to wake up. You nod, feeling the sting of "the Negro is still not free," some around you murmuring "Amen," others clutching signs that say "Now." Then Mahalia Jackson, standing behind him, shouts, "Tell them about the dream, Martin." You watch King pause, set his notes aside, and lean into the moment. "I have a dream," he says, and the crowd leans closer. His words paint a vision, a nation rising to its creed, sons of slaves and slave owners breaking bread. His 4 kids judge for their hearts, not their skin. Each "I have a dream" hits harder, louder, a rhythm that shakes them all. You're crying or shouting or both as he closes with "Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last." The crowd erupts. Applause, tears, joy like a dam breaking. You know this isn't just a speech, it's a prophecy, a lightning bolt through time. If this moment's got you hooked, drop a comment with your time zone. I'm dying to know who's up. Next, we're focusing on the crowd that made this day legendary. You're standing amid the sea of 250,000 on the National Mall. August 28, 1963, the air electric with sweat, hope and history in the making. This isn't just a crowd, it's the heart of the March on Washington, beating louder than any speech. You're brushing shoulders with a steelworker from Detroit, a preacher from Mississippi, a kid from Harlem with a hand-drawn sign saying "Equal Now." Black folks, white folks, old folks with canes, kids perched on parents' shoulders, they're all here from every corner of America. Some rode buses for 20 hours sleeping in their church clothes, clutching packed lunches like lifelines. You see a young girl with ribbons in her hair, eyes wide at the Lincoln Memorial, and a boy waving a sign bigger than he is. For them, this isn't politics. It's a promise of a world that might see them whole. You spot John Lewis, just 23, his SNCC speech still ringing fierce despite being softened at the last minute. Daisy Bates's voice lingers too, a lone female speaker standing for women like Rosa Parks, who's here, but silent in the crowd. Union workers, rabbis, nuns, students. They don't all agree on how to fight, some leaning toward Malcolm X's fire, others King's peace. But today they're one. You feel it in the linked hands, the Freedom Now buttons pinned to chests, the shared breath of 250,000 souls. They're not just witnesses, they're the change ordinary people turned revolutionaries by showing up. You're part of it, your presence a shout louder than any megaphone. If this crowd's power's got you hooked, hit that like button and drop your time zone in the comments. I'm curious who's up. Next, we're peeling back the curtain on the march's messy backstage. You're behind the scenes of the march on Washington 1963, and it's not the polished unity you saw on the Mall. It's a high-wire act held together by grit, compromise, and a whole lot of last-minute glue. You're with Bayard Rustin, the march's mastermind, juggling a logistical nightmare. 250,000 people, buses, permits, toilets, and a sound system that can't fail. He's openly gay, a former communist, and under constant fire. Some leaders fear his identity could tank the movement. You hear whispers of threats like Congressman Powell's old smear against Rustin and King haunting every plan. The FBI's circling too, bugging hotel rooms, tailing organizers, convinced this'll spark riots or a Red Scare. You feel the weight on Rustin's shoulders, but he's steady, mapping every route, timing every speech like a general. Then there's the infighting. The big 6 groups, NAACP, SCLC, SNCC, clash over strategy. SNCC's young guns like John Lewis itch for bolder action, frustrated by King's nonviolence. You see them grudgingly, unite knowing the world's watching. Women, though, they're sidelined hard. Ella Baker, Diane Nash, Rosa Parks. They're here vital, but get no mic. Daisy Bates' brief speech is a token, and you sense their quiet fury. Money's another beast. The march cost 250,000 or millions us today. scraped from unions and donors with walkie-talkies borrowed from Boy Scouts. It's messy, human imperfect, but it works, because they make it work. You're awed by the chaos that birthed a legend. If this backstage drama's got you gripped, smash that subscribe button and tell me where you're listening from. Next, we're exploring the march's lasting legacy. You're stepping back from the march on Washington, August 1963, its echoes still rippling through time. The dust has settled, but the question hangs heavy. What did it change? You see the immediate aftermath, newspapers call it orderly, a polite nod that skips the march's demands for a $2 minimum wage or a jobs program. President Kennedy meets the leaders impressed, but slow to act his civil rights bill stuck in Congress. You feel the activists' frustration. Weeks later, a Birmingham church bombing kills 4 black girls, a gut-punch reminder that the dream's still a nightmare for many. Yet the march shifts something deep. By July 1964, you watch Lyndon Johnson sign the Civil Rights Act banning segregation and job discrimination. In 1965, the Voting Rights Act follows gutting Jim Crow's core. Would these have happened without the march? Maybe, but not with the same fire. King's I Have a Dream speech catapults him to global icon, but fame costs him FBI surveillance threats his life in 1968. You see the march's blueprint inspire protests worldwide, from South Africa to modern Black Lives Matter rallies. Its demands, equal pay, fair schools, safe streets, still burn unmet in a nation where racial gaps in wealth, health and justice persist. You walk past King's Stone Memorial today, his words carved deep, but the real legacy's alive in classrooms, voting booths and streets where people still march. The dream's battered, not broken, daring you to keep pushing. If this enduring fight's got you hooked, drop a comment with your time zone. I'm dying to know who's up. This wraps the March on Washington story. Say next to start the next tale, but we're done with this script's parts. You're no longer a peasant scratching out a living in 1325, now you're Sophie, a sharp-eyed girl growing up in 1729 in a backwater German duchy called Anhalt-Zerbst. Forget sprawling castles. Your home's a modest manor, chilly and plain in a corner of Pomerania, where power's a distant rumour. Your mother Johanna is a social climber with a stare colder than a winter's night, always scheming for a better seat at the noble table. Your dad, a Prussian officer, is more drill sergeant than doting father, barking orders, while you learn to tiptoe between obedience and ambition. It's not a warm childhood, but it's a forge hammering you into something tougher than the world expects. By age 10, you're devouring books, history, philosophy, anything you can get your hands on, your mind, a sponge for ideas your small town can't contain. You speak French, German, and soon Russian, picking up languages like they're coins on the road. You watch rooms before you speak, learning who holds the power and how they wield it. Your mother's pushing you toward a grand marriage, but you're already dreaming bigger, not just a husband, but a legacy. In this stuffy duchy where every day smells of boiled cabbage and faded dreams, you're sharpening a mind that'll one day outwit an empire. Little do they know Sophie's not just a girl, she's a spark waiting to ignite. It's 1744 and you're Sophie, barely 14, stepping off a creaky carriage into the icy sprawl of St. Petersburg. The Russian capital's a glittering maze of opulence and paranoia, a far cry from your drab German duchy. Your thin dress is no match for the bone-chilling wind, but you plaster on a diplomatic smile knowing every eye's on you. Empress Elizabeth summoned you to marry her heir, Grand Duke Peter, a German-born nephew she hopes you'll tame. She thinks you're pliable, a Lutheran girl with noble blood and a humble streak perfect for moulding. But you've got plans she can't even dream of, and they don't involve being anyone's pawn. You're ushered into a palace where chandeliers gleam like frozen stars, but the warmth's a lie, spies lurk in every shadow, and whispers carry more weight than gold. To belong you ditch your Lutheran faith for orthodoxy, taking the name Ekaterina Alexeyevna Catherine. The conversion's a public spectacle, a fur-trimmed coat hiding your nerves as you swear allegiance to a new god and a new empire. No one sees the fire in your chest, the hunger to turn this foreign land into your own. You memorize Russian phrases, study court etiquette, and charm anyone who matters all, while your mother hovers pushing her own agenda. This isn't just a marriage, it's a high-stakes game, and you're already learning the rules, ready to rewrite them when the time comes. You're Catherine, now 16, and married to Grand Duke Peter, heir to Russia's throne, but the fairy tale wedding's more cage than crown. Peter's no prince. He's an awkward man-child, more in love with toy soldiers than you, staging mock battles in his chambers, while you're left to navigate the viper's nest of the Russian court. He's obsessed with Prussia, resenting the empire he's meant to rule. And some nights he won't even touch you, leaving your marriage unconsummated, and your status shaky. You, on the other hand, embrace Russia like it's your birthright, learning its language, history, and orthodox rituals with a fierce hunger to belong. The court's a minefield, your letters are read, your maids report every move, and Empress Elizabeth's spies watch you like hawks. Peter's tantrums and open scorn for Russian traditions make a liability, while you play the dutiful wife-charming officers and scholars in the shadows. Behind closed doors you devour Voltaire and Montesquieu, dreaming of a Russia shaped by reason, not whims. Your mother's still scheming, whispering foreign plots in your ear, but you're done being her pawn. You're building alliances, smiling through the gossip and biding your time. Peter's unfit to rule, and the court's starting to notice. You're not just surviving this marriage, you're plotting a throne, one careful step at a time. It's 1762, and you're Catherine, no longer the wide-eyed Sophie, shivering in St. Petersburg's chill. After years of enduring Peter's childish tantrums and the court's suffocating scrutiny, your moment's here. Empress Elizabeth's dead, and Peter III's on the throne, but he's unravelling faster than a bad tapestry. In mere months he's alienated everyone, insulting the church, snubbing the army, fawning over Prussia, Russia's sworn enemy, and muttering about divorcing you for his mistress. The court's buzzing with discontent, the generals are grumbling, and even the devout peasants see him as a foreign fool mocking their faith. You've been watching, waiting, weaving alliances in the shadows, and now you strike. You slip into full regalia, a vision of strength, and ride through St. Petersburg with military men like Gregory Orloff, your lover, and co-conspirator at your side. The Imperial Guard swears loyalty to you, their cheers drowning out Peter's name. It's a bloodless coup, swift and sharp. Peter, caught napping at his summer palace, surrenders, in days his reign crumbling like stale bread. Soon after he's dead, officially from hemorrhoidal colic, but the whispers say murder. You don't flinch. At 33, your Empress Catherine see you, not by birth or marriage, but by sheer will and cunning. The throne's yours, but holding it means proving a foreign-born woman can rule an empire that's already sharpening its knives. You're not just wearing the crown, you're forging it in fire. You're Empress Catherine now, the crown heavy, but yours and ruling Russia isn't just about sitting pretty. It's about reshaping a sprawling, stubborn empire. The court's still whispering about your coup, but you're already diving into ideas that make nobles twitch. Inspired by Voltaire and Montesquieu, you dream of a Russia driven by reason, not just raw power. In 1767, you launched the Legislative Commission, a bold move to rewrite Russia's creaky legal code. Your nakaz or instruction is a manifesto disguised as policy preaching equality before the law, the evils of torture, and a ruler's duty to serve the people. It's radical stuff for a land where serfs are treated like livestock. You're no starry-eyed idealist, though. Russia's nobles cling to their serfs like gold, and you know pushing too hard could spark rebellion. So you balance the scales, banning some torture-building schools, expanding libraries, but keeping the nobility sweet by leaving serfdom untouched. It's a tightrope act, enlightenment in public, hard-nosed politics in private. You write letters to Voltaire flattering his ego while defending your iron grip, and even buy Diderot's library to keep him afloat. Every move's calculated, every reform a chess play. You're not just ruling, you're sculpting a nation one cautious step at a time, proving a woman can wield power without losing her head. The Empire's watching, and you're ready to show them what a philosopher queen can do. Your Empress Catherine, your crown, a symbol of will as much as power. And in the 1760s and 1770s, you're not just ruling Russia, you're redrawing its borders with a sword and a smirk. This isn't about defence, it's about making an empire that makes Europe tremble. You set your sights on the Ottoman Empire, waging wars that aren't just for land, but for legacy. Under generals like Alexander Suvorov and Gregory Potemkin, your armies storm Crimea, snatch the Black Sea's northern coast, and secure warm water ports Russia's golden ticket to trade and influence. You style yourself as the liberator of Orthodox Christians, under Muslim rule a nod to faith but mostly a flex of power. Every victory screams Russia's no backwater. It's a beast. Then you turn west, slicing up Poland like a diplomatic pie with Austria and Prussia. By 1795, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth's gone erased, and Russia's gorged on new lands and millions of subjects. You don't just send armies, you send ideas, building cities, expanding trade, inviting German settlers to tame the wild steppes. Your empire's a mosaic, now stretching from Baltic ice to Black Sea sun, and you're the glue pouring over reports, signing orders, shaping a nation that's both feared and envied. Critics call you power-hungry, but you see it as destiny. In your Russia borders aren't lines, they're statements, and you're writing them in blood and ink, proving an empress can conquer as fiercely as any czar. You're Catherine, Empress of Russia, but behind the throne you're a woman who plays by her own rules. And in the 1700s that means a love life that sets Europe's tongues wagging. You don't hide your love as young, handsome, often useful, and you reward loyalty with titles, estates, or a polite exit if they step out of line. No one looms larger than Gregory Potemkin, a bear of a man with brains to match his swagger. He's not just your lover, but your partner in power, maybe even your secret husband, shaping campaigns and colonizing the South. Together you're a force planning wars, building cities, dreaming big. When the passion cools, he stays your ally, your confident proof that love can be strategy as much as heart. Europe scandalized, churning out pamphlets that paint you as insatiable, unhinged, even tossing around that vile horse myth your enemies cooked up to smear you. You shrug it off. In a world where women rulers are supposed to be saints, or sob stories, you refuse the script. You read philosophy, argue love's as natural as power, and keep your liaisons calculated, each lover a chess piece, loyal, capable, and often political gold. When they're done, you send them off with a smile and a pension, no drama needed. Your critics call it scandal, you call it survival. In your Russia, passion doesn't weaken your rule, it sharpens it, blending heart and head into a legacy that's as unforgettable as it is fearless. You're Catherine, Empress of Russia, your throne a fortress of cunning, but in 1773, a storm bruise that shakes your empire's bones. A bearded Cossack named Yemelyan Pugachev strides out of the Volga's shadows, claiming he's Peter III, your dead husband risen to reclaim the crown. It's a wild lie, but to Russia's weary serfs crushed under noble boots, it's a spark of hope. Pugachev promises freedom land and an end to serfdom's chains, his words igniting a fire among Cossacks, peasants, and old believers. Towns fall, nobles are slaughtered, and for a heart-stopping moment it feels like the empire might crack. This isn't a foreign war you can crush with cavalry, it's a revolt from your own people, raging against the inequality you've balanced to keep power. You don't panic, though. You unleash your army, a hammer of steel and discipline, to smash Pugachev's ragtag forces. By 1774, he's captured, paraded in an iron cage through Moscow's streets, then beheaded, a grim warning to dreamers. You tighten the screws, more surveillance, less mercy, and a nod to the nobles to keep their serfs in line. Your Enlightenment dreams of freeing serfs of Voltaire's ideals fade into whispers. Pugachev's rebellion scars your reminder that power built on shaky ground can tremble. You rule on, but now you know reform's a luxury when the mob's at your gates, and stability's the only crown that lasts. You're Catherine, your grip on Russia, ironclad after Pugachev's fall, but you're not content with just holding the throne, you want to etch your name in history's glow. Beyond wars and politics, you weave a cultural tapestry that makes Russia shine. You found the Hermitage Museum, stuffing it with art so grand it rivals Paris, turning St. Petersburg into a hub of sophistication, where Europe's elite take notice. You swap letters with Voltaire, charm, Diderot, and collect books like a dragon hoarding gold-building libraries to spark minds in a land once called backward. You push education, opening schools for girls unheard of in most empires, and champion smallpox inoculation, rolling up your sleeve to take the jab yourself, a bold move when half the court thinks it's witchcraft. Your court buzzes with music theatre and debates a stage where Russia struts as a modern power. Yet you're no dreamer lost in ideals. Every school, every painting, every book's a calculated flex proof an empress can wield culture as deftly as armies. You're not just ruling, you're crafting a Russia that's feared, admired, and undeniably yours. When you look at your empire, you see more than land, you see a legacy one that'll outlive the whispers of your enemies and the weight of your crown. You're Catherine, Empress of Russia, in the twilight of your reign, your hair greyer, but your will as fierce as ever. By the 1790s, you've ruled for over 3 decades longer than any woman in Russia's history, turning a sprawling, fractious empire into a powerhouse that makes Europe flinch. You've stretched borders by 200,000 square miles. Crimea, Poland, Black Sea, ports each conquest a brick in your legacy. But the years weigh heavy. Your son Paul, kept at arm's length, looms like a storm cloud, his resentment a threat to your reforms. Gregory Potemkin, your greatest love and ally, died in 1791, leaving a quiet ache no courtier can fill. You're surrounded by admirers, yet your memoirs confess a loneliness only power understands. You rise daily, poring over reports, editing decrees, managing a court that's a nest of ambition. You've built